Okay, we're talking with Chad Ryan. Chad is a member of the Consensus Group and a member of the Common Council. And Chad, thank you for taking a couple of seconds to speak with me.
Glad to do it.
And we'd like to get a couple of your thoughts on the consolidation.
All right, so the Consensus Group is a 19-member commission. Just start with the basics. 19-member commission made up of various different elected bodies have a representative. The council, county exec, county ledge, mayor's office all have representatives on it. But then you also have the business sectors, have folks on there, designees on there. And what the idea, it was originally funded with a grant from the state through DeFrancisco and Valesky. And they got 250 grand, and what that 250 grand went for was for a company called CGR out of Rochester. And essentially, what they do is compile information, essentially is what they do.
Okay.
And so about 18, maybe 19 months ago at this point now, we got together and thought about what the focus of our group was going to be, because we wanted to look at consolidation. Schools were not put into this group because it became such a large topic of discussion during our initial meeting, and very it's a very controversial topic, and we wanted to get moving with this. And if you bog it down with schools, it's just not going to move. It's a very important topic. It needs to be addressed. It certainly should be looked at by another commission after this, but it cannot be addressed to the degree it needed to be while we did while we did what we did.
Okay.
There just wasn't enough time, money, and resources there for it.
Okay. So you decided to focus on...
We left school districts out of it. Now, the group first went out, and what they did was a baseline report, and they went to all the municipalities. There's 37 different municipalities in the county, between the county and the city being the largest, and then towns and villages. After going to them and compiling information of, what do they spend on plowing, roads, all the different aspects of government, from, DPW to services rendered to administration, all that stuff. And then they compiled their list and broke it down. And then they went back to these municipalities and gave them an option to, not an option, but basically said, here's what we see. Now, some of them had some things they disagreed with. Please tell me why, show me where we can. And so they fixed some things because they didn't want any false information out there, and they didn't want to, feel like anybody was getting thrown under the bus, right? And so they did that, but at the end of the day, these are numbers, these are facts, these are what the facts are. And so they put the baseline report out, and then they broke off into groups, committee groups, governance, infrastructure, economic development, revenue sharing, all these different groups and subgroups in them. With these groups, they balanced it with folks that could leverage their personal skills. The guy that owns Bird Dairy, he, obviously economic development. He was on a few different committees, because he obviously has a good view. So
it was a wide spectrum.
It was a wide spectrum, and so after doing the report, talked about where they wanted to go, and really what they wanted to do was put out some recommendations. Now there's 51 recommendations on 80 pages. 50 of them have nothing to do with government, with county and city merging. 79 and a half pages have nothing to do with county and city merging. The last paragraph and the last recommendation are county and city merging. It's really the only thing anybody's heard about. There are 50 other recommendations that are very valuable and very important, from zoning countywide, countywide zoning plan, to revenue sharing, to all these other aspects. Obviously, the sexy issue is the city-county merger. That is, it's gonna happen one way or another, is what I say to my friends, and anybody that asks. The city is hemorrhaging money, and they run a $20 million deficit every year. They are slowly bleeding, and there's no end in sight. So when I go to these meetings that they hold around town and Camillus and all over, everyone's concerns are local control. You know, Camillus folks have the same issues we do in the city in that they want to be able to call their local representatives.
Okay.
And what happens is they're nervous that when we're going to merge with the county and get lost in the sea that is the county, and just the way the county's system is set up is it's not really tailored to neighborhood issues like the city and the towns, because essentially the city and some of these towns and villages do the same thing. The city just does it on a much more massive scale.
Okay.
We have codes departments, we have all these different neighborhood driven resident and constituent issue driven departments, and the county just does not have a setup like that. It's just a big business model, which has been great. It's been great for them. It's what it was originally designed to do. It's been an oversight, let them keep their municipalities in oversight. As it's grown and as things have changed, the city is not the economic driver for taxes that it once was, for property taxes that it once was. There was no money out in the town, and so the city had all the money 50 years ago. That has since changed, and so if we do nothing in the city, if we don't go forward with this, we will be piecing it off piece by piece. Now, one of the biggest concerns I hear from county residents is suburban residents, I should say, is we don't want to take on the debt of the city. You're going to take it on one way or the other. If the state comes in and gives a financial control board, you're taking it on them.
Yes.
If the county comes in, the more likely, and it's the way it would certainly happen here, is we will slowly bleed to death. We'll call the county, can you take parks? Boom, they'll take them. We'll call them, can you take DPW? Boom, they'll take them. And we will essentially strip all the departments from the city, and we will be left with one government anyways, and then a government that's built not to be responsive as the city currently is.
So this way you're setting your own agenda, you're not having it forced upon you.
It's going to be forced upon us one way or another, and so we need to get out in front of it. And that's not to say that the county government couldn't change how they do things and become more constituent driven in how they operate. It's just not how they operate now. And so that's not to say that couldn't happen, but moving forward, the city will go that direction. It's going to have to go that direction.
Okay.
And to the county residents, I have a lot of friends that live out in the towns, and they say, why should we have to pay for it? And I just say, well, then don't use our schools. Don't go to SU. Don't go to the hospitals. Don't use any of the nonprofits in the city. The economic engine of our city. I got a ton of friends. They drive downtown. They make $100,000 a year, and then they drive back out and say, "Fix your roads." I say, "How am I going to fix my roads when you come in and then take your money out to the suburbs? We don't have any tax base here, and I don't blame you for not wanting to live here. You can live wherever you want, but we don't have any tax base here."
As the city goes, so goes the county.
And in the way, our valuable property is all tax exempt.
Okay.
Syracuse University, tax exempt. The hospitals, tax exempt. Most of our businesses, large businesses, rapid response, a lot of these places get pilots, and they're good because the trade-off is sales tax and jobs. So while we offer that, which the county controls the sales tax, and we get 25% of, which is a good deal. But at the same time, we have to do it on our backs. We have to give these jobs away on our backs and the property taxes away on our backs because of the current climate in New York State. And everybody on this commission has agreed we need to ask for state mandate relief. We are one of 2 states in the country where Medicare is placed on the backs of the counties. The others are administered by the state. And so we have unfunded mandates, a lot of unfunded mandates here in New York State.
Okay.
And what that means is the state says you got to provide this, but you provide it. It's not.
You pay for it.
Yeah, you pay for it. And so we are responsible for doing a lot of that. I think we need to move forward. As I said before, one way or another, the city and the county are going to merge. Now, my argument to a lot of these towns and city residents that are not happy with how they perceive the county to be responsive to issues. Well, what we're trying to do is form a new entity. If you don't like the city and you don't like the county, great. Let's get rid of these two. Let's form a new government. Let's write a new charter. Let's write it up in a fashion that is up to date. You know, it's 2016, and yes, they've made changes to these charters, but the world is a vastly different place than it was 50 years ago. Vastly different place. And we can streamline government. We can, you know, when they talk about tax savings, you know, they're, from what they've seen in other places, is there's not a tremendous amount of tax savings. But what there is economic development has been the general theme of what they've done in these other places. And what happens is, you know, you form a county-wide government and a county-wide land use plan. You make it fair across the board with city input and county input and town input and village input. And so that way it's a very broad and diverse and well thought out plan. You know, you provide revenue sharing, you know, so that the city and some of these towns and villages, you know, can stay viable. What they're looking at is if some of these villages and towns stay under the 2% tax cap, which is required by the state for the rebates and all that, they will not be, they'll be in the red in within 10 years, 12 of them.
Okay.
And so one of the questions has been, well, name those 12. Well, the guy who asked me to name those 12 is a village or a town supervisor, and he said, well, we want to know those 12. And I didn't want to say it to him, but he was one of those 12.
So their realities are changing too.
Well, and you know, they don't want to admit it. You know, they don't want to admit it because they're nervous. And there has been precedent in the past where places have been, you know, kind of absorbed into the county, or some powers have been transferred over to the county, and they just lose control of everything. And I certainly understand that. Folks want local control. But if we could, I mean, if you just simply talk about plowing, you know, you talk about plowing the city and the county, and the trucks stop at the lines. I mean, if you simply draw more efficient routes, you know, you can do it either quick or you can do it with less folks.
Right.
If you can, you know, codes. I mean, if you have a county-wide code plan for different zoning districts, residential districts, and this and that, you know, the plans are set out there. There's a unified system. Here's what they are. When you do zoning, you know, if you're zoning A1 city, blah, 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 you can do X, Y, and Z. If you are in Geddes, you know, it's zoned to suburban, you know, can only be residential. So they can really redo that plan in a fashion that will be extremely efficient for businesses to operate and to get through the system. You know, so often now you say, oh, there's so much red tape there, you know, we're going to go out there, you know.
Okay. So it's a question of education for different groups, as it
it's
were.
Really the whole thing would really be, and it wouldn't be easy. It certainly wouldn't be easy. Now, one of the bigger questions that's been going around is, what would this new government look like? Now, if we had come to you and handed you the report and said, here's what the government will look like 6 months ago, people wouldn't even have read the report. They would have said, well, you guys have already made your mind up, you know. So that's not what they wanted. You know, we haven't even discussed the options and the plans of what wanted to go in. We discussed what some of the recommendations would be because we wanted feedback, and we extended that feedback from 6 weeks to 12 weeks. And so some of the critics have been saying that we should expand it longer. You know, I heard one person say that we should expand it 18 months, which would have coincided with a new mayoral candidate being elected the day after, the way he said it. So it was, you know, there's a lot of political agendas here, and this group does not have that. This group is really there for what's best. I mean, if you sat in that room and you listen to these folks or had a conversation with any of the commission members, that's not what they're there for. And when they go through this process, it's not going to happen overnight. You know, they are going to, it's going to be, if it does get voted on, you know, then it's going to be a 5-year plan to implement. Okay, it's been voted on. Now you guys all come to the table and write this charter. And charters are the holy grail of how government and municipality operates. Okay. And so what needs to happen